Good afternoon, and welcome back to Black Life Amplified, the virtual town hall series hosted by the African American Leadership Forum. I am Adriene Thornton with Children's Minnesota, and I am your host for today's show. And I want to acknowledge our sponsors, the Minneapolis Foundation, Northpoint Health and Wellness, and Children's Minnesota for making this possible. We also want to thank our community partner organizations, which include Northpoint Health and Wellness, Children's Minnesota, Insight News, and Minnesota Community Care. Be sure to visit our African American Leadership Forum Facebook page, as well as our YouTube channel, to watch previous episodes of Black Life Amplified, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date on full episodes. We want to hear from you during the show and after the show, so make sure you leave your comments. On today's episode of Black Life Amplified, we're going to talk to some educators about preparing to start the school year. And we know that all of you all are waiting with bated breath to hear what they have to say. We're going to get some insight into how we as a community can work to make this school year a success for all of our children. So today, we are joined by an esteemed guest panelist. And our first panelist is Dr. Teresa Battle, who is the superintendent of Independent School District 191, Dr. Stephanie Barrage, Deputy Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Education, Tanisha Burrows, math teacher at the new 279 online school, April Vaughn, a teacher in the Woodbury Public Schools, and last but not least, our Black Man Magic, Emmanuel Donaby, Program Manager for the Kitty Anderson Youth Science Center in St. Paul, and a father with a child starting school soon. And I have to be honest with you guys, I'm really excited for us to have this conversation. Thank you all for giving us your time today. And I know that my experience is going to be slightly different from others. I don't have school-age children. My youngest is in college, but there are lots of parents out there that are sending their young children to school and teenagers to school this year. We want to start with asking each of you, how are you feeling right now? Are you excited for the school year to begin? Are you slightly fearful about what's to come? Are you exhausted from people like me asking you how you're doing? So let's start with Dr. Barrage.
I'm going to say that, as always, as a former teacher, an administrator, superintendent, I always get excited about the beginning of the school year. That's just an exciting time for families and for kids to get back. Has these last 16 months been very different? Have they been slightly challenging? Sure they have. And so as we all come together and always work together for the betterment of our students and our kids, I still am very hopeful and excited about the beginning of the school year. So always excited, but just always very hopeful and very cautious to make sure that we meet the needs of our students, no matter what we're going through.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Dr. Battle, what about you? How are you doing?
Well, thank you, Adrienne, and glad to be here with all of the other panelists. I, too, am excited. We're getting ready to welcome back 7,500 K-12 students, our early childhood students, early childhood special education students to in-person learning after Labor Day. And we also are launching our new virtual academy, online learning, with about 347 students. I'm excited because students are excited. Just this morning, I had the opportunity to talk to a senior, a member of the class of 20. Oh, we had 25. But she's excited. She's seeing a lot of people. She's looking forward to seeing a lot of people she has not seen since March of 2020. She's excited about her classes, particularly college in the schools, American government, band. She's excited about returning to in-person activities such as student council. And so I'm not fearful. I think we are excited to build upon the successes and the lessons we learned by educating and leading during the pandemic. So just very excited to welcome our students back.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Ms. Burrows, what about you?
Well, I am very excited to start a new year. I always look for opportunities of growth as an educator. And so this year I am teaching in the Osseo area schools 279 online program. And so this will be an area of growth for me as I transition from a brick and mortar in the classroom teacher to an online instructor.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Ms. Vaughn, how are you feeling today?
Thank you for having me on this panel with these lovely people. I'm always excited at the beginning of the school year. So I did, summer school or summer camp, and we went back to classes. I work for the St. Paul district, and we went back in March, I think. So we went from March all the way until June, and it was fine. So I'm pretty excited about the school year.
Wonderful. And Mr. Donaby, having a little one going back to school and working to help kids, how are you feeling today?
Greetings, all. Thank you for having me. It's a bittersweet moment, to be honest and truthful. Very excited. I share that excitement as the rest of the panelists to have our, students back in school and in person. The nervousness of what could happen is always in the back of my mind, but not fearful, just a little nervousness, just hoping that school is in the proper way to make sure that everybody is safe and following along with the MDE, MDH rules, guidelines, and what have you. But all around, I led a successful summer school program, and we were in person this summer. So we dealt with some challenges, we dealt with some successes. So I'm excited for the students to be back in each other's presence and learning from each other in a positive, safe social environment. So it's happy to see what can happen.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. So, Dr. Barrage, let's just jump right in there, get to the meat of the conversation. We're going to throw you in the fire first.
All right.
And a lot of people want to know, how is the Minnesota Department of Education supporting the schools across the state? What is their role in getting the schools prepared to accept the kids back into school this year?
Sure. And I would say for the last probably 16 plus months, they've been extremely and incredibly difficult on all of us, especially our students and our families. And so we know that our students' education, it's been disrupted. We've all gone through a global pandemic. We've all been in it together. And we know that we need to be able to provide support for our students, not only when it comes to academics, but also the social emotional side and the mental health side for our students as well. We know that when it comes to data, and we will have statewide MCA's data later this week, which is really only one piece of information that helps us do a systems check for our students. But we know that our districts, I've had numerous conversations with district superintendents, district leaders, that they have been measuring where their students are at this entire time. They do this every day. Our teachers do a phenomenal job of looking at this across the state. But throughout our pandemic, we have worked closely with our educators, with our school leaders, with our teachers. We've constantly heard concerns from staff around making sure that we're meeting our needs, that those that may be falling behind. So I want to be clear that the disruptions to our students' education has been of no fault of their own. We have lived through a global pandemic. Knowing what we know now, that a lot of students and families that have had concerns, we have always worked with our schools to make sure that we have things in place to support our schools. As we're looking forward to the coming of the school year, we're going to continue to help our schools and our families recover. We know that in this pandemic, it hasn't been equal for every student. It's been very different for each student and for families. But what we do know is that we will continue to provide support and targeted support to our districts. As a former superintendent in the state, we did a lot, and I know superintendents have done a lot to provide additional support in summer to make sure that we can work with our students and our families to make sure that there was additional support. We've provided additional support for our schools to implement evidence-based practices to meet individual student needs And we will continue to do that as we move forward. So making sure that support and providing additional funding to schools through grants and through additional funding streams to help the school districts meet the needs of their students. So that's what MDE has been doing in supporting our schools.
Wonderful. Thank you. I know that's been a lot of work for your team throughout the summer to get those resources in place to make sure that our schools have what they need. And I know that a lot of the decision making has been transferred to the district level to give the districts the freedom to flex and bend based on the needs of their students. So, Dr. Battle, let's move to you next. At the district level, how are you preparing for the students to return? Are you also hearing from your staff that they're concerned? Do they feel prepared? Are the parents excited and in supportive and agreement with the programs that are being rolled out, or are they still kind of questioning the direction we're going? And then, how do they feel about having the options that are available to them for their children to go back to school this year?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we're leading with the principle that has helped to guide us throughout the pandemic. We need to meet our children and families where they are. So we have to be flexible and creative. So as you know, we're making a transition with more students coming back to in-person learning. So we have 5 days a week, as well as our virtual academy. And so a few ways we're really attending to students' needs. Many of our incoming first graders never had an in-person kindergarten experience. And so we're going to have 2 days of meetings with teachers, scheduled appointments with parents, guardians, and their children for orientation and as well as to assess where they are academically and socially, emotionally. We also are attending to other transition grades such as 6th grade and 9th grade because they're transitioning to new buildings. So we have a student leadership program at 6th grade called Where Everybody Belongs. And in high school, it's Link Crew. And so 6th graders and 9th graders will have 1 day with their student leaders and teachers for orientation and to help that transition to middle and the high school. And our teachers are so excited. They're getting ready. Yesterday, I welcomed almost 60 new teachers for 3 days of professional learning. About a week and a half ago, our formal building level leadership teacher leaders came in for their professional learning. We have an advisory period to building social, emotional, and academic college and career learning in middle and high school. And then we're attending to the nuts and bolts. So I have teachers from my virtual academy here today at the district office, putting together materials for those virtual learners for pickup day tomorrow. And so what I'm hearing from staff, they are excited to return, but they want us to continue the safety measures we put in place, the mitigation strategies to prevent the spread of COVID. And then our parents have always been supported. Health and safety was foremost in our minds, making sure we had enriching curriculum and experiences for our students. And in June, we surveyed our parents, and 90% of our parents said that they felt their student was seen, valued, welcomed. They felt welcomed in the school. They felt their children saw themselves in the curriculum because representation matters.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I covered what we're doing to prepare. So thank you for that question. It's really important for us to meet the children where they are, academically, socially, and emotionally, and as well as the families, because we've all had different experiences in the pandemic.
Wonderful. And you're right. Everyone's experience is different. So it's very important that we do some individual consideration, which is hard because you have such a large district. So we applaud you all for realizing that, that individual consideration is important and figuring out how to process that so that all the kids feel seen and valued. So I want to now move to my teachers. And I know that it's a little different experience for both of you all, Tanisha, because you are doing strictly online, which will be really new and interesting and exciting for you. But to you and April, how do you feel about the school year? Do you feel like you're prepared? and ready to go and welcome the kids back into the classroom, whether it's in person or virtually. Well, Tanisha, this doesn't really apply to you, but do you feel like you have the PPE you need in terms of masks and hand sanitizers? And, one of the things for in-person learning that we know that people are trying to figure out is the spacing issue. And so do you all feel like you have, the spacing issue tackled, or do you need more work to be done around that? Do you need more assistance, or do you have a plan that you think will work? So let's start with you, April, because you will be in person, and then we'll go to Tanisha.
Thank you for asking that question. So working in St. Paul, as far as like being ready or do we have enough PPE, I would say yes. Like I said, we went back in March and we didn't have any issues where we ran out of hand sanitizer or any kind of, we used it wasn't like little alcohol wipes on the tables and things. And we did that before class and then after class. And then we were blessed at my school to have sinks in the classroom. So kids were able to wash their hands as frequently as they needed to. My biggest concern as an educator is the mental health of our students, because some families have lost family members to COVID, and how to engage them with that and get them back in academically. I think we can't move forward with academics until we have the mental health concerns and needs met by teachers and students and parents. So that's my biggest concern. The PPE stuff is also important, but I think the most important thing right now is the mental health.
Wonderful. And Tanisha, what about you with the online learning? I know this is a new platform and a new experience for you, but do you feel like you're ready to get started and get the kids into that online classroom? And are you finding that your students have what they need to start the school off and be successful?
Yes. Thank you for asking. So I guess in this question, I'm going to wear two hats. So I am a parent of a rising fourth grader who will be in person. And so as a parent of a student in my district, I do feel like the district is ready and prepared to receive her. I do feel like, the PPE will be in place in terms of teachers and students and sanitation and all those things. I feel like she's going to be fine. So from that perspective, yes. Also, as a teacher leader in my district, I work closely with making sure that my colleagues that are in person will have what they need to have a successful year, so that we can focus on, as April said, the social emotional healing that needs to take place from our families that have been affected by COVID, and so that we can get back to learning and students can feel safe in their school environment as they would have pre-COVID. As an online teacher, I can tell you that we are in a better position than we were in the fall of 2020. I believe that those who have elected to be online to serve families who, for whatever reason, they need the online experience for their scholar, I believe that we are ready. We are in a better position to serve your student, your scholar, whatever they need, whether it be gen ed or special ed services or EL services. I definitely feel that our online programs are ready to serve in that capacity, and you have more of a community connection because the online experience is connected to your district versus an online experience that may be general for anybody that lives in Minnesota. These online experiences that are being created by individual districts allow you to have more of a community feel with your scholars and their families and the teachers that already work in the district. So I do believe that we are in a much better position than we were in the fall of 2020. We've learned from our mistakes. which is what we want all scholars to do. And so we're going to be better. It's going to be a better year than it was last year.
Wonderful. That's great. And I'm in school right now myself, and of course, it's very different from being, in pre-K or kindergarten or high school. But it is my classes are strictly online, and I will tell you, I struggle at times. So I totally understand how it will be harder for kids, because as an adult, I'm okay with the social isolation. I'm okay not seeing people on a regular basis because I have so much going on in my adult world. I need a break from people. But, I can see where it's a struggle for kids to be online, and some kids don't do well in person. My daughter, who is in college, struggle with the in-person learning. So I'm glad that we're able to offer the kids both options and figure out what works best for them. And we've been having conversations about being prepared with PPE and hand sanitizer. And I just want to ask you all, because I think we have representation from, a nice cross match of districts. Are we seeing mandates for masks for the kids in any of your districts? And anybody can go first. And I'm just asking in general because I have not been keeping up with this. And I know that has been kind of a bone of contention for some families, having the thought of their child having to wear a mask all day. So what are your school districts doing? Are we mandating masks? Are we making them optional? Are we highly recommending them? What are we doing with the mask situation?
So I can go first. So I recommended, and the 191 school board voted to approve requiring masks for students, staff, and visitors 3 years of age and up. Parents have been supportive all along of our health and safety strategies. We do have a few expressing a concern about the discomfort of their students having to wear a mask for long periods of time during the school day. So our nurses have been very helpful and instrumental with students, families, and staff of when it's appropriate to take mask breaks, how to do so safely. And then we do follow the recommendations from the Minnesota Department of Health. And so that's where we are. And as you know, we can have ups and downs, surges of COVID-19. And so my board did authorize that if I need to make a different decision, they gave me that authority. So last year we had several pivots. So for the most part, students choosing in person had an in-person learning. But when we saw community spread increase, that's when it started to creep into our schools. So following the health and safety, we did not have to close any school because of the spread of COVID. And so that's what I'm hopeful is the goal. The school board and I want is to keep kids in person as much as possible. We do not want to have them going home for quarantine, shutting down schools. And so we just really want to make sure we're doing everything we can to have that in-person learning.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And April, okay, go ahead, Emmanuel. Yes.
You back off of that real quick because we just finished our summer program a couple weeks ago, and currently I'm the school board chair for a small charter school here in St. Paul called St. Paul City School. We just had a school board meeting last week, and the vote was unanimous to continue the mask mandate to wear a mask. But some of the parents, of course, would not like that. But the thought is first and foremost to keep our scholars safe. And one of the safest ways that we can do, I mean, nothing is set in stone, and we don't have all the answers, but one of the safest ways, the kind of easiest way, is just to make sure that students are wearing masks and trying to be social distance as possible. But students, they love each other. They haven't been in each other's presence for a while, so they're naturally gonna gravitate towards each other. So having that mask mandate is kind of a precaution message. probably one of the safest ways that we can do, easiest, safest ways. So I'm for that mask mandate. Although it can be uncomfortable, we implemented mask breaks as well. We made sure that when students are eating, they're having their proper space and they can take their mask off, of course. But it's kind of hard to regulate something that's, in school that's not in the general public. So you kind of got to just keep an eye on what's going on in the general public and stay safe as possible. Get parents buy-in as well.
Exactly. And April, what about in your school district?
St. Paul Public Schools is doing a mask mandate in the fall.
Okay, so you are in St. Paul. Okay, I get the districts mixed up. So, and Ternisha, you don't have to worry about a mask mandate, but for your
I
baby,
do. I have a scholar that is a rising fourth grader. So I do have to worry about a mask mandate. And Osseo area schools will have a mask mandate for the fall, for the first trimester as well.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, I'm in 196, which is right next to 191. And so even though I don't have children in the school district, I've been very active in supporting the educators in my district and attending school board meetings and, voicing my opinions, because as a recovering infection preventionist, I was knee deep in COVID for a year and a half. And so I think it's imperative that I share my knowledge and my wisdom. And so we are, really trying to push for a mask mandate in 196, and it has been an uphill battle. So I'm hoping that our proximity to 191 will help to make our battle a little bit easier, and we can get mask mandates for the children here. And, just as an example of what can happen without a mask mandate, as an infection preventionist, in Minnesota, we tend to monitor the states on the East Coast and in the southern part of the United States, because they start school before we do. And usually when we're looking at viruses and pandemics, things happen there first and then roll up to the Midwest. And so in Mississippi, they started school and they did not have a mask mandate. And within the first few weeks of school, they had 20,000 students that were either quarantined or had been diagnosed positive with COVID. And actually one baby got COVID and died in that school district. So very, very sad, very disappointing. Over, 1,600 educators tested positive within the first few weeks, because once you all get together, it just spreads like wildfire, And so that's what we want people to understand is, the mask is the simplest way to prevent transmission between people. And people always ask me, they're like, well, you're an infection preventionist. Are you going to give me a hug? And I always say, yes, let me put my mask on and then I'll give you a hug, because the mask is that added layer of protection. So very important for our kids. And so, Emmanuel, I want to go back to you because I didn't get an opportunity to let you talk about how you're feeling as a parent sending your child to school. What are you most concerned about? Are there things that you still have on your list of, oh, I better make sure that we've checked into this, or are you feeling fairly comfortable with your child going back to school this year?
Thank you for that question. So I'm the proud father of 3 beautiful girls, girl dad, and my 2 oldest, one is a college graduate, and the other one is finishing up her senior year now. The youngest is just entered her junior year at De La Salle. And, I wasn't too nervous because of the precautionary measures that De La Salle takes. And they're very communicative with families via email and, digital voicemails. But also leading my summer program, making sure that I was aware of how to make sure she's safe. And my daughter, my youngest daughter, Karma, she is super sensitive and aware to what's going on. She's also vaccinated. So my comfort level was was pretty high. It still is. It's just, in the back of your mind, of course, I'm always, what ifs, but I'm very faithful. Stay prayed up in my family. I'm good. She's good. She knows how to protect herself. And then, if something happens, if there is a case of COVID in the school, I'm pretty sure they'll shut down properly and do the necessary actions to follow.
Wonderful. Yeah. At Children's Minnesota, we often, we want to get parents and staff on board with doing something. We go to the kids first. Because children are so good about holding themselves and others accountable. So I understand what you say when you say your daughter is very aware of, what's going on. It is amazing. Children are very resilient and they understand everything. And if you really want something to get done, ask a child to do it for you and they will get it done.
Mhm.
So I want to go back to Dr. Battle and Dr. Barrage and talk about staffing. So we know that it's critically important to have school nurses in each of the schools. And I know at my hospital, as well as other hospitals around the country, we're experiencing some fairly major staffing shortages with all disciplines, but especially with nursing. And so I want to ask you, how are you all doing with staffing? Do you have enough nurses to staff all the schools and cover them? Are you seeing shortages in other areas, such as in psychology and other areas that you really see a need? And then if you're seeing shortages, what are we going to do to fix that problem? And I say we because we are a community, and it's everyone's responsibility. So just wondering where we are with our nursing especially, but also other areas that you need staff coverage.
So I can start. Our colleagues at the Minnesota Department of Health, they have been working closely with our school nurses throughout the pandemic. They have weekly meetings, weekly calls with the school nurses across the state to make sure that we are that they have all the information, the support, and the resources that they need. And this is a both and where they share information with us as well. We are continuing to try to build our capacity to support our school nurses. And that's so important. And I'll say for myself, my daughter has grown up with she was a medically fragile child, and we could not have made it without the school nurse being in the school. So it's so important that we have nurses available to support in our schools as well. Again, very appreciative of the work that our nurses are doing and that they have done in this past year. They have carried us. Many of our school nurses have stepped up. They've served as COVID coordinators in school districts. They've been leading the COVID testing across districts. They're critical to our community. And I hope that more and more students will start to look at nursing as a career, because we are leaning on our nurses. Those that have been retired have stepped up and that they have helped us as well. So you're right. It is critical for our nurses to be in the districts, but from the MDE perspective, we are, again, partnering with the Minnesota Department of Health and making sure that we are utilizing all of our nurses and the support of our nurses to support our schools. So Dr. Battle would definitely give it another perspective as what it's like at the school level.
So yes, thanks, Adrienne, for that question, and Dr. Barrage for setting the statewide narrative. So I just want to express how very important our health professionals have been during the pandemic and just really previously. So the values of nurses is really important, but we actually have a comprehensive staffing that includes partnerships. So our health professionals really were the anchor during this pandemic to answer questions and provide information to students, families, staff members, and community. So we have about 14 health services staff. I have 8 elementary schools, 2 high schools, and 2 middle schools, plus early childhood special education, and I have a Project Kids child care program. So we have licensed practical nurses, RNs, health assistants, but the comprehensive support includes our social workers, psychologists, and then we have 2 community partnerships. So Headway provides emotional health So we have school-based therapists that work on mental health needs, chemical abuse, and school success. And then here at we also have a partnership with Park Nicollet Foundation. They provide health resources. We have a clinic here at Diamond Head Education Center. They offer mental health and also grief counseling and support. So we know some were severely impacted by COVID illness as well as the loss of life. And so that grief counseling is really
Yeah.
going forward important. So it's been comprehensive.
Oh, you muted yourself, Dr. Battle.
So did you, sorry about that, everyone. So to say a little bit about the other staffing needs, special education teachers, educational assistants, food and nutrition service staff, and bus drivers. And so today our bus provider, Smitty and Sons, is having a transportation fair. So yes, we are still looking in those critical areas as well. So thank you for that question.
Wonderful. Yes, I know. It's just been amazing to see all of the pressure on everyone to fill those staffing shortages, especially with the bus drivers out here in District 196. I know that they have been offering different types of incentives to get people to consider driving the buses and working for maintenance in the school district. So hats off to you all for trying to manage that. And so I'm going to pivot to April and Tanisha just to ask you, with these staff shortages, with not perhaps having enough mental health professionals or having enough social workers, are you feeling additional pressure on yourself to help navigate those spaces for the kids that you're teaching? How does it impact you, these other shortages?
Well, I think pre-COVID, we never really had enough social workers, psychologists. So, as a classroom teacher, you're still going to do what you would normally do. You're going to serve as the teacher, the counselor, the social worker. If your building doesn't have a social worker, we already had these shortages before COVID. So, which is why we try to push for that community school model so that you can have more, you can create a more well-rounded scholar when you have those community school models, because they have those resources already embedded in the school. So teachers are going to do what they've always done. We're going to care for our scholars. We're going to teach them. And when our scholars need help beyond the classroom, beyond academics, we're going to reach out to the resources that we know and get them the support that they need, whether it be within our building, within our district, through our sister friend districts. We just use our resources to provide for our scholars so they can have the best academic experience possible.
And April, what about for you? Is it pretty much the same?
I couldn't have said it better. I mean, Ms. Burrows, Tanisha, I mean, that's exactly correct. We already had these deficiencies already. So it's just been compounded with COVID. And so we're going to do what we always do, what we've always done. And it's usually having to organize together as teachers to figure out what we're going to do. I remember, I'm working in the St. Paul district. Before COVID, we were on strike for 3 days. And one of the things that we were striking about was the lack of nurses. There were 10 schools in our district that did not have full-time nurses. And then on top of that, we were also advocating for having full-time psychologists on campus, like in the schools all day long, not just them bouncing back and forth from different schools. We were advocating for that. We were on strike for 3 days before, the state shut down. And so we still have, I'm assuming we still have that deficiency. And now we have a shortage of 50 bus drivers in St. Paul Public Schools, and we're doing all these incentives, but school starts, or we go back on Monday for the teachers, but then the kids come back on the 9th. we have to figure out what we're going to do with that.
Right, and definitely figure out the bus driver situation before the winter time, because walking to school right now is fine, but once that Minnesota winter hits, that is going to be a lot more difficult. So, Emmanuel, I want to talk to you a little bit more because I know that you ran a summer program for kids, and I want you to talk about, what did you all do? How did you handle having the summer program during a pandemic? What were some of your successes? And do you have any advice, for our colleagues going into the school year, based on what you learned from your summer program as educator and as a dad?
Yes, thank you for that question too. So what helped us best for this summer was just being prepared, and then once we felt like we were ready to go, we then planned and strategized even more. So try not to be complacent and right, let's just do this. We just made sure that we prepared, we had supplies ready, we had important, valid meetings, so we weren't just meeting to meet. We were meeting to do research on. There was in-school programming about a month before we began our summer program, a month and a half, and so we were able to discuss with the teachers who ran in-person learning prior to our summer program. We were able to get some hints and comments from them. One of the big things is as an educator to communicate with parents as well, to get them to be on the same playing field, so they understand that this is our job is to best serve your children. We can best serve your children with your input and providing that safe space where parents felt like they could have input to help us serve their children. But then also making sure that they understood we don't have all the answers. We're just going to do our best to provide this safe and place where your children can come and learn. And so the summer interns that we hired were on the same page as well. So they would do research. They would make sure that they were up to speed. And then when you're in, frontline worker, you're kind of putting yourself and your family at risk. So it's kind of your duty and your responsibility to make sure that when you're off work, you're kind of still remaining safe and keeping all the precautions that you're supposed to do too. So every day for our summer program, we ended with a debrief. And for that 30, 45 minutes, we were just prepping and planning for the next day. And then for our summer program, it's a summer program by the name of Freedom School. We're the first STEM-focused Freedom School in the nation. Freedom School is a program on the Children's Defense Fund. And one thing, so Freedom was a 6-week literacy-based program, and it's free for all parents and families. But your obligation is to show up for a weekly parent empowerment meeting, and that's your payment to the program. So at these parent empowerment meetings, they were virtual this year. And we had great attendance, great participation from the parents, but we had open dialogue as well with them. So we would let them know our field trips that we were planning on taking, or if we weren't taking them. And then we were also, some parents have vast backgrounds themselves. So we would get their input on how to stay safe and what they heard in current events. And it's just open communication, because we're all human. We are all in this unforeseen time, and we're all learning from each other. And we should be open to the new things that's coming on and how to adapt to them.
Wonderful. And I appreciate you adding in the sentence about self-accountability when you're not at work. I agree that, your accountability for those kids doesn't end at the end of your day. It continues through your life. And so thank you for bringing that up, because oftentimes people feel like, oh, well, I'm at home now. I can have a huge party with a bunch of people who may have COVID inside of a building with no airflow, and I'm okay. And actually, you are not okay. You should still be following the same guidelines, even when you're not at work, to make sure that you're not bringing that risk back to work. So I want to talk a little bit more about meeting the students where they are. And I know that we talked about the evaluations of all the kids prior to school, making sure that we do assessments so that we know where they are, because online learning was difficult for many. And so when the kids are coming back to school, is the goal to, after the evaluation, get them caught up to where they should be? Or is the goal to take where they are and maintain them staying on the right path and staying, on the path they're going so that they don't fall behind further? Are we going to try and, because is there even a way to catch kids up? I mean, I don't even know if we're able to do that if they fell behind because of COVID. Are we able to catch them up? Or are we just going to meet them where they are and make sure that they stay on track so that they don't fall further behind? And
So
anybody can answer that.
Yeah, I can start with that.
Okay.
So I don't think my children are any less smart than they were before COVID. So their learning was interrupted. So I'm not sure all of them had learning loss, because we did focus groups with some elementary students about what they learned. And this is what two of them said. I learned how to work in groups and go in and then come back and tell what we talked about and what was important. Another child said, I learned to create using, and now the teachers will have to help me with the name of the tools, Flipgrid, or so they use a lot of tools to create and express their thinking. And so that's why it's important for us to see where each child is. We should not make assumptions. They also talked about how they learned empathy, even if they don't use that term as they're younger, but to care about others, and that others have different experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to look at that. So that's why it's important to take kids where they are. So I would say our goal is to accelerate where they accelerate their learning, because it was interrupted.
I want to echo what Dr. Battle has said, because learning is interrupted every summer for 3 months. Learning is interrupted winter break, other holiday breaks. I think we need to look at it from a perspective of our scholars learned different during COVID. They learned different things. They learned more technology things. They learned more social emotional things in terms of empathy and empathizing with those that may be going through things that you may have never experienced in your life. So there was different types of learning that took place during the 2021 school year. And I believe that you should take each scholar as an individual and not make assumptions on what they may or may not have learned in terms of Minnesota academic standards. There may be some gaps that you have to fill in because maybe you didn't get to that standard because it was interrupted by a pivot in the learning model that you were in at the time. But I believe there was a lot of learning that took place during this past academic school year. It just looked different. And so I would encourage each teacher, ESP, parent, I would encourage all of us to not box our scholars in and assume that they're coming to us with a deficit.
And I would also add on to that. I agree wholeheartedly with what everyone has said so far, and that was a great question. You also want to make sure the relationship between it, and you can hear it with everyone here, the relationship between the parents and the teacher and their leaders at the school is so important, because this isn't just about how we function during the pandemic. This is about the relationship that a parent has with the teacher and their schools at all times. And so at any time, every kid is every student, every scholar is individual. And so you always want to make sure that you have that connection between home and school. And I can tell you what we did learn. And this I've seen when people said, oh, we may not have seen parents previously prior to COVID. what we did find out through the pandemic is that through virtual conversations, parents were connected to their schools and their teachers. They were connected on a regular basis. It wasn't about just parent-teacher conferences. It was about, I have a direct line. I can, through video chats, through Zooms, through Teams, meet with my teacher and talk about where my child is at and get support and help. So we heard that over and over again, that was a benefit, that parents and schools were actually probably better connected than what they had been in the past.
Great. So as we get close to the close of the show, I want to give everyone the opportunity to share with our audience your why. Why do you do the work you do? I think I could probably come up with multiple reasons why I think you do it. I know that you all love the kids and you have a passion for education, but I want you to share your why with our audience. And we can start with you, Emmanuel.
All right. That is a super deep question. And I will be surface level with it, but I'll get a little personal with it. It's so growing up, I didn't always focus on education. Education, I grew up here in St. Paul, Minnesota. We know how Minnesota has one of the best educational systems in the nation, ranks among the top 5 or 10 or something like that, but very horrible for Black males specifically. People of color, but Black males specifically. So education wasn't in the front foremost of my mind, and it honestly wasn't what my family, the males in my family, had promoted to me. As I got older, I became more aware of what was going on, and seeing that, how come I'm not learning about healthy living, healthy food, education, investing, and just how to be a better man or have a better career. And when I got that aha moment, it kind of changed me. It changed my life. Also, I had my first daughter as a graduating senior in high school. I knew I needed to do something better for her, and set the tone to show her, there's a different path that I could take to provide a better life for her. So that was kind of my aha wake up moment. And I started to focus harder on education. I enrolled myself into St. Paul College. I started to take more classes. I started to just learn about things. And then I actually fell into education by someone I met in St. Paul College. And my cousin Levon Fields, he got me a teaching assistant position in the school district. And from there, I learned dealing with children and being that positive role model and being a representation, because I had one Black male teacher growing up, during school. And I said, why is that? Why do we not have more of that? So seeing that there was not enough, seeing that I needed to be that representation now that I knew what was going on. If you know there is a problem and you don't try to fix that problem, then you become part of that problem. And trying to eliminate that and trying to just inspire more youth to see a positive light for Black males, kind of gave me that why. And then to finish it off is just when I got into the field and when I saw the impact that I could have on others and how I could help people get into the field, it just inspired me, because I love to give people that platform to be that stepping stone where they can just build their career and build themselves and have their own aha moments. So it gives me joy to help put people in places of growth and to be positive role model if I can be. That's kind of my why. That's some of my why. Why your why is.
Why it could be big or small. But we appreciate you, brother, and we are happy to see you here. And our children are blessed because you are there teaching and educating them and being their support. So thank you. And so next I want to go to Tanisha, because I know that you were historically in the classroom and now you're going to be exclusively teaching online. So can you share your why with us?
Absolutely. And I am still in the classroom. My classroom is just
online.
Virtual. So yes. So it is still a classroom.
Okay, let me ask you. So when you do the online classrooms, I've never seen them. Are you on a screen and you have multiple pictures of your students so that you can see them all at the same time? Or is it kind of you're looking at what you're teaching and they can see you?
All of the above.
Oh, okay, wonderful.
I have my device can dual screen. I have a second monitor, all of the above. So
Okay, wonderful.
I can do it all.
Now I want to teach online. Okay, go ahead and share your why.
I'm going to just keep it simple. So I think the best way for me to talk about why I teach and why I love this work is we all do better when we all do better. And so I work with new teachers, probationary teachers on mentoring, because when we are better educators, we can, our students are better learners. When our students are better learners, their family their status in their family and what they can do and how far they can go as a contributing community member is better. So when we all do better, we all do better. So I just want people to do better. And I believe we can do better as a collective. And so that's my why.
Wonderful. Thank you. And April, let's go to you next. What is your why? Besides loving kids and wanting to teach, what is your why?
My why is just to give back to the community that raised me.
Wonderful. All right, so I'm going to move on in the interest of time, and I'm going to go back to Dr. Barrage and Dr. Battle and just ask you all, what are your final words of wisdom that you want to share with our audience to help them prepare for the school year? Are there any tips that you have for our parents? Anything you want to say to them as a closing?
I could start it and end with Dr. Battle, the great words of Dr. Battle. But to know that, stay connected to your schools. You have to know your teachers. You have to have a relationship with your teachers. You have to be so connected that they know you. Don't just stop at the classroom level. You need to be connected throughout your entire district. Attend board meetings. Email your superintendent. Email your board members to let them know where you're sitting on topics that they're discussing, so that people know that your voice can be heard. Your voice is so important in a school system. The schools cannot do it without you. You are one of the most important people in the schools, is having your voice be heard. So that's big for me. Be connected. School at the classroom level and at the district level.
Dr. Battle?
So I would agree, yes, stay connected to your child's teacher, school support staff, and your principal. I also would advise parents to talk to your child about what they're excited about, what they're worried about. So sometimes adults worry about different things than children are worried about. So children may be concerned about, who will I sit with at lunch? Will I make new friends? I'd also say cultivate that love of learning. So I purchased 8 books. So when I go to classrooms every week and visit, so here are 2 of my faves, All the World, and this book about this dog that goes on adventure, Chowder. So love of learning. And then I would also say, get your children's immunizations up to date, please.
Yes, very important to get your immunizations up to date. And just so that our audience is aware, you can view the Minnesota Department of Health recommendations for schools by going to health.state.mn.us. And you can also go to the Minnesota Department of Education webpage that is dedicated to COVID-19. You can get updates and information for schools at that website. And also, it's not too late to get vaccinated. Our Northpoint Health and Wellness continues to offer cash incentives for people who get vaccinated until supplies run out. You can reach them at the number listed below, 612-348-9000, to make an appointment. And also, Minnesota Community Care is offering vaccines at various locations. So I want to close out our show and just say thank you to all of our panelists. This has been wonderful. Again, I don't have school-age children, but I am still very engaged with that community. And so I really appreciate the information and the insights that you shared today on the show. And to my audience, you may have noticed that in most of the questions I asked, what can we do? What are we doing? What do we need to do? And that is because it's not just up to the educators to do all the work. As a community, we have to come together and collaborate to make sure that our children have a successful school year. And it's very important for our kids to see us working collectively to get to the same point of making sure they're educated. So remember that the we is all of us: educators, parents, staff, students, community members, whether you have children in school or not. We all have to work together to make sure that our children are successful in the school year. We're sending love and light out to all of our educators and our students, and we know that it's going to be a great school year. And again, we want to thank all of our sponsors: African American Leadership Forum, Northpoint Health and Wellness, Insight News, and Minnesota Community Care for your continued support of this show. Wishing everyone to have a great school year. Thank you for watching Black Life Amplified, and we will see you at our next broadcast.